Hi, I am Jill Brotman with App Properties. Thank you for joining. I'm a real estate broker and consultant, and I'm here today with someone that I would love to introduce you to. Eric Schulman is a senior partner with the Matrimonial Law Firm of Schiller DuCanto Fleck in Lake Forest. He's been practicing family law exclusively for an excess of 20 years and concentrates his practice in Lake and Cook counties primarily. Why am I introducing you to Eric? I'm introducing you to Eric because he was my divorce attorney, and I loved working with him, and I'm going to explain to you why. And throughout our chat today, I'm sure that you will get the same feeling that I had. And so when I went through the whole process of trying to decide who I was going to ask to represent me in my divorce, it was really important to me to have somebody that I felt would represent me at the highest level of professionalism and integrity, somebody that I could be proud to have fighting for me without fighting. I wasn't interested in somebody that I felt was going to be very aggressive per se in front of a judge, but could quietly and professionally do exactly what we needed to do to protect my future and, more importantly, my children's future. And I was absolutely not let down by Eric. And without further ado, Eric, hello.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. So today we're going to talk about a few things. First of all, I would like to briefly discuss with our viewers how you go about contacting you. Is it, an appointment that somebody has to make with you and then they're locked into using you? Exactly what is that process? And then I also want to talk about what it means to coexist and what it looks like to coexist with somebody during the divorce process. And then lastly, I would like to discuss, if it becomes necessary, how you remove a spouse from the marital home.
Sure. No, those are all are good topic points. So initially, if someone is interested in having a consultation, generally speaking, what they'll do is they'll call the office. More times than not, when they call the office, they'll know that they want to come in for a consultation, and they'll set up a consultation with my assistant. And usually those consultations will last an hour, hour and a half or so, or if it needs to last longer, it will. But in some instances, clients call into the office and they're really just looking to gauge whether they need to come in or they're at the point where they're ready to come in. And in that circumstance, what I'll do is I will speak to the person on the phone and I'll have a short conversation with them and just sort of get an understanding of what they're looking for and whether their case is one that sort of matches with my firm's level of expertise. And if that's the case, then we'll set up a subsequent contact date for them to come in and meet with me. But it really depends upon where the person's coming at from a standpoint of need. If they've made a decision that they're looking forward to moving on with the divorce, 9 times out of 10 they're going to come in before we even have a conversation. And once they do come in, generally speaking, they will have created an attorney-client relationship with me. And what that means is that their spouse can generally not hire anyone else in my firm if they decide not to move forward with the representation of me or someone else in my firm. So it does insulate their spouse from being able to hire anyone else in my firm if they do that.
Excellent point. Okay. Thank you. So now we can move on to the question that we have about living together. How do we coexist in a marital home when we're going through a divorce?
For sure. And that's a tricky one. I mean, generally speaking, what I will try to advise my clients of is if they're forced into a situation where they have to remain in the residence together while the divorce case is pending, I, for the most part, will provide them with a couple recommendations. One is making sure that they maintain some level of distance, physical distance with their spouse in the house. That's done for the purpose of not escalating any type of arguments or any altercations, and protecting their well-being, both physically, emotionally, mentally. And I also will advise them not to engage their spouse or try to disengage with their spouse on areas that may be sensitive to the divorce case, such as discussing settlement issues, delving into the financial ramifications of the divorce. The items that the two of them really should be speaking about should be limited to decisions relating to their children, scheduling issues relating to their children, perhaps the payment of bills that are necessary to accomplish while they're living in the home. But for the most part, I try to give the general advice, listen, diffuse the tension, try to de-escalate the level of acrimony in the home, because really nothing good can come of it for either you, your spouse, or the children as it relates to you personally and as it relates to the divorce case. So, I mean, that's the typical advice I will give a spouse when they come in, because most people don't necessarily have the funds to effectuate a physical separation once they decide to go forward with the divorce. If they have the money, great, then that issue doesn't surface. But that isn't the most common occurrence in divorce cases. They're sort of forced into the home together, and these cases can last for a while. So you need to learn to try to coexist if you can.
By the way, not to get too off topic, but I'm just curious with during this COVID-19 period, what is happening with court cases?
Sure. So right now, the courts are generally open exclusively to emergency situations.
I
So for the most part, they're not having hearings. To the extent there is an emergency, you can go into court. You can go into court through a video conferencing type situation in an emergency. And in limited instances, at the discretion of the judge, they will hear routine matters through video conferencing. But for the most part, you're more or less shut out from the court system during this period of time, absent some pressing emergency, which would really only relate to an emergent financial issue or something that surfaces with the children as it relates to parenting time or any other issues that may be pressing or urgent.
I see. Thank you for letting me get off track there for a moment.
No worries, no worries.
The last question that we were going to talk about today was, if you end up in the unfortunate, circumstance where you need to remove a spouse from the marital home during your divorce, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a tough hurdle for a litigant to overcome, because there is a very high threshold that needs to be reached or achieved in order for a judge to evict one spouse from the marital residence. And generally, what you'll need to do is file a petition with the court, asking the court for exclusive possession of the residence. And really, the standard that you need to prove to a court is that the continued co-occupancy of you and your spouse serves to seriously jeopardize the physical, emotional well-being of either yourself or your children. And, that can be demonstrated through a number of different ways. It can be physical harm, which it happens. It's more rare in these cases, but the more commonly set of circumstances I see where someone is trying to get someone evicted from the home is a situation where the abuse is much more subtle. It's in the form of harassment or intimidation. And that manifests itself in different ways. It can be anxiety. It can be lack of sleep. It can be the children suffering emotional distress as a result of it. And those are things that you're going to need to prove to a court, whether through your own testimony or the help of a mental health professional. And it's a very difficult thing to do and prove to a judge. It's not impossible, but it is a high threshold to overcome. And it has to be in the form of a written pleading. You cannot simply make the request orally, and the other side is entitled to a full hearing on the merits on that type of a request, because the relief that is being sought is so severe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In light of what's going on again with, us having to shelter in place during this time, I just think that that's an important topic to bring up. Sadly, it's reality for some, and I really appreciate that thorough uh, answer.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
and that's just an example of why I enjoyed working with you, because I feel like your answers are just so thorough and well thought out, and I highly recommend you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I am going to share your contact information if I have your permission.
Please do.
Okay. So you can contact Eric by calling his office number at 847 604 6078. Again, 847 604 6078. Eric's office is located at 100 Northfield Drive, Suite 160 in Lake Forest, and that is at the corner of Route 60 and the Tri-State. So Route 60 and 294 on the north side of the street. And Eric's email address is eschulman, spelled Schulman. So it's ESCHULMAN at sdflaw.com. I'll repeat it one more time. Schulman at sdflaw.com. Eric's number is 847-604-6078. And when you become a client of Eric's, he will most likely share his cell phone number with you. And he is always great at getting back to you if he can't pick up the phone at that moment that you call. Right, Eric?
Oh, well, thanks so much. I do share that cell phone with everybody. I think it's important for them to have a level of confidence that in the event they need to reach you in some sort of an emergency or after hours, they have the ability to do so.
Thank you again. Again, I'm Jill Brotman with At Properties, and I can be reached at 847-814-0333 for any of your real estate needs. If you need a consultation for a comparative market analysis, I'm also a certified stager, and thanks for joining.